My name doesn't matter. I'm 31 years old, and I spent 13 years providing security for Memphis's biggest rap stars. Everyone thinks the music industry runs on talent and hustle, but that's the first lie they sell you. The real power isn't the rapper on stage with a gold chain. It's not even the label executive in the boardroom. It's a Grammy-winning producer who's never spent a day in the hood, who launders more money in a month than most artists make in their entire careers. I know because I stood guard outside studio sessions, where my boss, a man who controlled 3 neighborhoods and moved weight through half the South, took orders from this guy in Balenciaga sneakers. Before I tell you how deep this goes, hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications. This story cost me everything: my career, my friendships, my city. The music industry doesn't want you to know what I'm about to expose. Subscribe now before this gets buried, because what you're about to hear isn't just my confession, it's the truth about who really controls hip-hop in America. I was born in 1993 in South Memphis, Orange Mound to be specific. If you're not from Memphis, you might not know what that means. Orange Mound was one of the first black neighborhoods built by black people after the Civil War. By the time I was growing up, it was one of the poorest, most violent areas in the city. My father was gone before I could remember him. My mother worked 2 jobs, day shift at a hospital cafeteria, night shift cleaning offices downtown. She'd leave at 6 in the morning, come back at midnight. Sometimes I wouldn't see her for 3 days straight, because our schedules never lined up. We lived in a shotgun house that should have been condemned. Roof leaked when it rained. No heat in winter except for a space heater that barely worked. Summers were brutal. Memphis heat with no AC is like living inside someone's mouth. My mother did everything she could, but minimum wage in Memphis in the late 90s wasn't enough for anything except survival. I grew up to the sound of Yo Gotti, 3 6 Mafia, 8 Ball and MJG. Memphis rap wasn't like other cities. It was darker, grittier, more raw. These artists rapped about exactly what I saw every day: poverty, violence, hustling, survival. They were gods to us. They'd made it out. They had money, cars, respect. They proved you could come from nothing and become something. Music was everywhere in Memphis. You couldn't walk down Beale Street without hearing it. The city breathed hip-hop. And behind all that music was money. Real money. The kind that could change lives. I wanted that. Not the fame. I never wanted to rap. But I wanted to be close to it, to be part of something bigger than the poverty I was drowning in. Everything changed when I was 16. My mother had a heart attack at work. She was only 37 years old, but decades of stress and exhaustion don't care about age. She survived, but the medical bills were catastrophic. We had no insurance. The hospital sent us home with a stack of bills totaling over $60,000. That number was impossible. It might as well have been 60 million. I had to drop out of school. Someone had to work, and my mother couldn't anymore. I got a job at a car wash making $7 an hour. I worked 12-hour days and brought home barely enough to keep the lights on. The hospital bills sat on our kitchen table like a death sentence, getting bigger with interest every month. That's when I met Deshaun. He was a few years older than me, always had money, always dressed fresh. He managed security for local rap shows and studio sessions. One day at the car wash, he pulled up in a brand new Escalade. We got to talking. He asked about my situation. I told him about my mother, the bills, the impossible math of poverty. He listened, nodded, then made me an offer. He needed muscle for a show at the new Daisy Theater. Just stand there, look intimidating, keep drunk people from rushing the stage. $300 for 4 hours of work. I made that much in a week at the car wash. I said yes immediately. That first show changed my life. I stood in front of the stage while a local Memphis rapper performed to a packed crowd. The energy was electric. Girls screaming, guys throwing money, everyone living in that moment. And I was getting paid to be there. After the show, Deshaun handed me $300 in cash. Then he asked if I wanted more work. For the next year, I did security for shows all over Memphis, clubs, concerts, private parties. The money was good, better than anything legal I could do without an education. I was making $1,500 a week, sometimes more. I paid off my mother's medical bills, bought her a better house in a safer neighborhood. For the first time in my life, I wasn't drowning. But the deeper I got into the music scene, the more I saw what was really happening behind the scenes. These rappers weren't just making music, they were moving product. The shows, the tours, the studio sessions, all of it was cover for a massive drug operation. The real money wasn't from album sales or streaming, it was from the weight they moved using their tours as distribution networks. By the time I was 20, I wasn't just doing security at shows, I was protecting shipments. Rappers would go on tour with their crew, and hidden in the equipment trucks were kilos of cocaine and heroin. Each city on the tour was a drop-off point. The local promoter wasn't just booking the show, he was picking up product. It was genius. No one suspects a rapper's tour bus. Police see black musicians and assume it's just weed, maybe some pills. They had no idea millions of dollars of hard drugs were crossing state lines in plain sight. I moved up fast because I was reliable and I kept my mouth shut. By 23, I was head of security for Marcus King, one of the biggest rappers in Memphis. Not quite Yo Gotti level, but close. Marcus had 3 platinum albums, millions of Instagram followers, endorsement deals with Nike and Beats. He was living the dream. Or so I thought. I went everywhere with Marcus. Studio sessions, video shoots, club appearances, his house in Germantown. I was his shadow. I saw the money, the excess, the power. I thought Marcus was at the top of the food chain. A self-made millionaire who'd escaped the hood and built an empire. Then came the night that shattered everything. It was March 2023. I was 29 years old. Marcus got a call, and his entire demeanor changed. He went from relaxed to tense instantly. He told me we were going to a private studio session in East Memphis, an expensive area where recording studios cost $500 an hour. When we arrived, there were already several cars in the parking lot, luxury vehicles, a Maybach, a Porsche Taycan, a blacked-out Range Rover. Inside the studio, the atmosphere was different. Usually sessions were loud, chaotic, full of energy. This was quiet, controlled, professional. Sitting in the producer chair was a white man in his early 40s, designer glasses, tailored jacket over a vintage band t-shirt, expensive sneakers. He looked like every music producer in LA or New York, wealthy, connected, untouchable. This was Ethan Stone, a Grammy-winning producer who'd worked with everyone from Kendrick Lamar to Drake. His credits were worth hundreds of millions of dollars. Marcus walked into that control room, and his entire energy shifted. The confidence evaporated. His shoulders hunched slightly. His voice got quieter, more careful. He sat down across from Ethan, like a student meeting with a professor. I stood in the corner of the lobby, outside the control room, trying to be invisible, but I could see through the glass. Ethan had a laptop open with spreadsheets displayed. Not music production software, actual Excel spreadsheets. He was pointing at numbers, explaining something. Marcus just nodded, occasionally leaning forward to look closer, taking notes on his phone. For 2 hours, this went on. Not a single beat was played, not one bar was recorded. This wasn't a music session, this was a business meeting. And Marcus, the multi-platinum rapper with millions of dollars and nationwide fame, was taking orders. When they finally finished, Marcus walked out, looking exhausted. Ethan stayed behind, making phone calls. Marcus saw my confused expression and shook his head slightly. The message was clear: don't ask questions. But I couldn't stop thinking about it. Over the next few weeks, I started paying closer attention. I noticed patterns. Every major decision Marcus made, which cities to tour, which features to do, which producers to work with, came after a conversation with Ethan. I noticed that other rappers, even ones from different cities, would fly into Memphis for meetings with Ethan. I saw the luxury cars outside his studio at odd hours. I saw men in suits who definitely weren't musicians. Then I started connecting the bigger picture. Ethan Stone had produced albums for at least 15 major rappers across the South: Atlanta, Memphis, Houston, New Orleans. All of them were connected, all of them moved product, and all of them answered to him. He wasn't just producing music, he was orchestrating a network that used hip-hop as cover for one of the largest drug distribution operations in America. The tours were the distribution network, the studio sessions were strategy meetings, the music videos were recruitment. The whole industry was a front, and Ethan, with his Grammys and his $1 million mansion in Beverly Hills, was the real kingpin. He'd never touched a brick of cocaine in his life, but he controlled every ounce that moved through the southern rap scene. That realization hit me like a freight train. Everything I'd believed about hip-hop, about making it, about the culture, all of it was a lie. We weren't artists building empires. We were pawns in someone else's game. The rappers were just middle management with microphones. The real power was in the production credits, in the contracts, in the invisible infrastructure that nobody pays attention to. 3 weeks after that studio session, Marcus called an emergency meeting with his inner circle. Just 5 of us, his most trusted people. He looked stressed in a way I'd never seen before. Ethan had given him new directives. The operation was expanding, new territories, new artists, new methods, and with expansion came risk management. Marcus pulled out a list. 12 names. People who knew too much. People who'd become liabilities. People who'd outlived their usefulness. My stomach dropped when I saw the 4th name. Deshaun, my mentor. The man who'd given me my first shot in this business. The man who'd saved my life when I was 16 and desperate. Deshaun wasn't just my mentor. He was the reason I wasn't dead or in prison. When I was 16, broke and desperate, he gave me a chance. When I needed guidance navigating this world, he taught me how to survive it. When my mother needed surgery 2 years ago and I was short on cash, he covered the difference without me even asking. He showed up to her hospital room with flowers and told her I was doing good work, that I was making something of myself. She believed him because she wanted to believe him. Deshaun had been in the music security business for almost 20 years. He knew everyone, had connections everywhere. He'd worked with legends, artists who'd put Memphis on the map back in the 90s. He'd seen the industry evolve, seen it get darker, more corporate, more corrupt, and apparently he'd started talking about it. That was his crime. Not stealing, not snitching to police, just talking. Mentioning to the wrong person at the wrong time how the business had changed, how the real money wasn't in music anymore. The morning after I saw that list, I couldn't function. I called in sick to Marcus, something I never did. I sat in my apartment staring at the wall, trying to figure out if there was any way to warn Deshawn without signing my own death warrant. But I knew the answer. This wasn't the streets where you could give someone a heads up and they could disappear. This was bigger, more organized. They had eyes everywhere. If Deshawn tried to run, they'd know I tipped him off. If he didn't run, he was dead anyway. I was trapped in a catch-22 that had no good outcome. Marcus called me the next day. The tone in his voice told me everything. I needed to come to his place immediately. Not the studio, not his club, his actual house in Germantown. The house with the gate and the security cameras and the soundproof basement. When I arrived, Marcus was in his living room with 2 other guys from his security team. The mood was heavy, serious. Marcus explained the situation in that detached, business-like tone people use when they're trying not to feel what they're doing. Deshawn had been flagged by Ethan's network as a security risk. Too much knowledge, too loose with information. The decision had been made at the top. It needed to look like a robbery gone wrong. Random street violence. Nothing that would draw attention or raise questions. And because I was Deshawn's protege, because everyone in the scene knew we were close, I was the one who had to do it. If someone else did it, people might suspect internal politics. If I did it, it sent the message Marcus had explained. Loyalty to the organization supersedes everything, even family. I felt my stomach turn to ice. This wasn't a request. This was a test. Refuse, and I'd be on the next list. My mother would be collateral damage. Everyone I cared about would become loose ends. The system didn't allow for hesitation or moral conflict. You did what you were told, or you became the problem that needed solving. Marcus handed me a burner phone with an address. Deshawn was expecting me. I'd texted him earlier that week about grabbing drinks, catching up. He'd suggested Thursday night at a bar in Midtown. He had no idea what was coming. Why would he? I was his boy. I was family. I spent the next 2 days in a fog. I went through the motions, showed up to studio sessions, stood in the background, pretended everything was normal. But inside I was breaking apart. I kept thinking about all the times Deshawn had helped me, the advice he'd given, the connections he'd made for me, the genuine pride in his eyes when he saw me succeed. I was about to repay all of that with a bullet. Thursday night came too fast. I met Deshawn at the bar. He was already there, sitting in a booth, nursing a beer. When he saw me, his face lit up. He stood up and gave me a hug, one of those half handshake, half embrace things men do. He asked about my mother, about work, about life. I gave short answers, trying not to engage too much. Every word felt like swallowing glass. After an hour of forced conversation and 2 beers I barely touched, I suggested we head out. I told him I had something to show him, a potential security gig at a new venue. He was interested, always hustling, always looking for the next opportunity. That's who Deshawn was. A grinder who believed in the game. We walked to my car. I drove toward the industrial area near the airport, an area full of warehouses and empty lots. Deshawn started to sense something was off. He stopped talking. I could feel him looking at me, trying to read the situation. His hand moved subtly toward his waistband. He always carried. I pulled into an abandoned lot behind a closed factory. The streetlights were broken. It was just us and the darkness. I put the car in park but left it running. For a long moment, neither of us moved. Deshawn knew. I could see it in his eyes. Not panic, resignation. He'd been in this game long enough to know how it ended. He looked at me with something that broke me. Not anger, not betrayal, just sadness. Like he was disappointed. I'd let them turn me into this. like he'd expected better from me. I pulled my gun. My hand was shaking. My heart was pounding so hard I thought it might explode. Every instinct was screaming at me to stop, to drive away, to refuse. But I thought about my mother. I thought about the list. I thought about what they'd do if I didn't follow through. I fired 3 times. Quick, professional, the way I'd been trained. Deshaun slumped against the door. Blood spread across his shirt. His eyes stayed open for a few seconds, still looking at me before the light went out. I sat there in that car for what felt like hours but was probably 10 minutes. The smell of gunpowder mixed with the metallic smell of blood. The engine hummed. My mind went blank. I'd just murdered the man who saved my life. I'd become exactly what this system needed me to be. A killer without conscience, a tool without humanity. I disposed of the body in the Wolf River, weighted down with chains, the same river where I used to fish as a kid, where Memphis families had barbecues on summer weekends. Now it held the body of a good man murdered for knowing too much about the wrong people. When I reported back to Marcus, he barely looked up from his phone. He just nodded, made a quick call presumably to Ethan, confirming the situation was handled. Then he handed me an envelope. $15,000. Hazard pay, he called it. Blood money. Payment for destroying the last piece of my humanity. That money sat in my apartment for 3 days. I couldn't touch it, couldn't spend it. It felt radioactive. Finally, I took it to Deshaun's sister, told her I owed him money, that this was part of what he'd lent me. She cried and hugged me, thanked me for honoring his memory. I wanted to die right there. The next few weeks I started seeing the operation with new eyes. I paid attention to the studio sessions differently. Ethan would come to Memphis once a month, sometimes more. He'd meet with Marcus and other local artists. They'd go over tour schedules, album releases, feature collaborations, but underneath all of that was the real business. Roots, distributors, money laundering through merchandise sales and streaming fraud. Ethan had created a perfect system. The music was real, these rappers had actual talent, actual careers, but every career was also a distribution network. Album releases coincided with major shipments, tour stops were drop-off points. Music videos filmed in different cities were actually reconnaissance for new territories. The entire southern hip-hop scene was a front for an operation moving hundreds of millions of dollars annually. And Ethan, the Grammy-winning producer living in Los Angeles, was untouchable. He had connections in the industry, in law enforcement, in politics. He donated to charity. He mentored young producers. He spoke at music conferences about artistic integrity and empowering Black voices. Meanwhile, he was using those voices as cover for an empire built on addiction and violence. The guilt from Deshaun's death ate at me constantly. I couldn't sleep. I couldn't eat. I started having panic attacks. I'd be in the middle of a studio session and suddenly couldn't breathe, had to step outside. Marcus noticed but didn't say anything. As long as I did my job, my mental state wasn't his concern. I realized I had 2 choices. I could stay in Memphis, keep working for Marcus, keep being a tool in Ethan's machine, and eventually end up dead, or in prison. Or I could run. Try to disappear, build a new life somewhere far from Memphis and the music industry. Running meant leaving everything. My mother, my city, my identity. But staying meant becoming more of a monster than I already was. The list would keep growing. More Deshaun's would need to be eliminated. More loose ends would need tying up. I'd keep killing until someone decided I was the loose end. I started planning carefully. Over 6 months, I skimmed money from various jobs, club appearances, private security gigs, cash payments that wouldn't be tracked. I accumulated $70,000, hidden in a storage unit across the river in Arkansas. I made contact with someone in Atlanta who specialized in fake documentation. It cost me $12,000 for a complete identity, birth certificate, social security number, driver's license, work history. My new name was James Wilson, born in Charlotte, North Carolina. I memorized every detail of his fictional life until I could recite it in my sleep. I picked Nashville as my destination, close enough that I could get there quickly, far enough that it wasn't Memphis, big enough to disappear in, small enough that Ethan's network might not have complete coverage. Music City. Ironically, I'd be trading one music hub for another, but country music operated differently than hip-hop. Different players, different rules. The plan was to disappear during a tour stop in Little Rock. Marcus had a show there in 2 weeks. I'd drive the equipment truck like usual, but instead of returning to Memphis, I'd just keep driving east. Ditch the truck in Birmingham, catch a bus to Nashville, and vanish into a new life. 2 days before the Little Rock show, everything almost fell apart. Marcus got a call from Ethan. There'd been an audit of recent operations, some discrepancies in cash flow, nothing major, but enough to trigger investigation. Everyone who handled money would need to account for their activities over the past year. My heart stopped. The skimming had been so small, so careful, but with professional accountants looking closely, they'd find the patterns. I had maybe 48 hours before they figured it out. I made the decision instantly. Couldn't wait for Little Rock. Had to go now. That night, I loaded my car with everything essential, the fake documents, the cash, one bag of clothes. I drove out of Memphis at 2 a.m., watching the city lights fade in my rearview mirror. By the time anyone noticed I was gone, I was already in Nashville, checking into a motel with cash, using a name that didn't exist 24 hours ago. I was 30 years old, and I'd just erased my entire life. James Wilson was born in a motel parking lot in Nashville, carrying blood money and borrowed identity. For the first time in 13 years, I was free from the music industry's grip. Or at least, that's what I told myself. Nashville was a different world. The city had music in its DNA like Memphis, but it was cleaner, brighter, more polished. Country music money built different infrastructure than hip-hop money. The downtown area glowed with neon signs and tourist attractions. Broadway Street was packed with honky-tonks and bachelorette parties. It felt safer somehow, like the darkness I'd lived in didn't exist here. I rented a small apartment in Antioch, a working-class neighborhood south of downtown. The landlord accepted cash and didn't ask questions. My one-bedroom unit was sparse, a mattress on the floor, a folding chair, a hot plate. But it was mine. No Marcus, no Ethan, no music industry. Just James Wilson, a nobody from Charlotte trying to make it in Nashville. The first month was brutal. I'd wake up at random hours drenched in sweat, convinced I heard footsteps outside my door. Every car that lingered too long in the parking lot was coming for me. Every knock on a neighbor's door made my heart race. I'd see Deshaun's face constantly, that final look of disappointment before the light left his eyes. The guilt was a physical presence in my chest, making breathing difficult. But humans are resilient. We adapt even to our own monstrosity. After 6 weeks, the panic attacks became less frequent. After 3 months, I could sleep through most nights. The paranoia never vanished. I still checked every face, still varied my routines, still avoided cameras, but it became manageable background noise instead of screaming alarm. I needed legitimate work. The money wouldn't last forever, and idle time was dangerous. I found a job at a construction site in Murfreesboro, 30 minutes south. Framing houses, laying foundation, hard manual labor. The work was exhausting but honest. Nobody cared about James Wilson's past. I was just another body with a strong back willing to work for $15 an hour. The legitimacy of it was intoxicating. Wake up, work 10 hours, come home sore and tired, collect a paycheck with taxes deducted. It was boring. It was beautiful. For the first time since I was 16, I wasn't looking over my shoulder every second. I wasn't calculating threats or anticipating violence. I was just existing. I made rules for myself. No connections, no friendships, no relationships, nothing that could become leverage. I was polite but distant with coworkers. I didn't go to bars after work. I didn't date. I was a ghost occupying the body, visible but not really present. That strategy worked perfectly for 14 months. Then I met Angela. She worked at the coffee shop I stopped at every morning before my shift. Early 30s, warm smile, easy laugh. She was from Chattanooga, moved to Nashville with dreams of country music stardom that hadn't panned out. Now she made lattes while working on her nursing degree at night school. We started with small talk, weather, construction stories, safe topics. She asked about me, and I fed her the James Wilson fiction I'd rehearsed thousands of times. The lies came automatically because I'd lived them long enough they felt almost true. But with Angela something shifted. When I talked to her, I had to consciously remember to maintain the fiction, which meant part of me wanted to tell the truth. That was dangerous. That was how people got caught. I should have stopped going to that coffee shop. Should have found another place, kept my distance, followed my rules. But loneliness is its own kind of starvation, and I'd been starving for genuine human connection. For so long I didn't recognize how desperate I was. After 4 months of morning conversations, Angela asked if I wanted to get dinner. I knew it wasn't just friendly. I knew I should decline. Every survival instinct screamed at me to walk away, but I heard myself accepting, and the happiness in her expression made the danger feel worthwhile. That dinner turned into a second date, then a third. Within 8 months we were spending most of our free time together. She was everything I wasn't: open, honest, uncomplicated. She talked about finishing nursing school, about working in a hospital, about maybe buying a small house someday. Normal dreams, achievable dreams, the kind of dreams that regular people have. I fell in love with her gradually, quietly, like realizing you've become dependent on oxygen. She made me feel human again, like I was more than just a ghost hiding from a blood-soaked past. With her, James Wilson felt real, the construction worker who made her laugh, who helped her study for exams, who held her when she was stressed. That person felt more authentic than anyone I'd been in Memphis. 13 months after arriving in Nashville, Angela and I moved in together. A small house in a quiet neighborhood, nothing fancy, but it was ours. She kept talking about the future, about plans, about permanence, and I kept lying, kept building a life on sand, knowing eventually the tide would come. It came on a Tuesday morning in November 2024. I was at the construction site, working on roof framing. My supervisor came over looking uncomfortable. Someone was asking for me at the trailer office. Family emergency, they'd said. I knew immediately. The way my supervisor wouldn't make eye contact told me everything. I followed him anyway, because running would only delay the inevitable. The man waiting wasn't from Memphis. He was younger, late 20s, wearing Carhartt work clothes like he belonged on the site. But his hands were too clean, his boots too new. He looked like someone playing dress-up as a construction worker. My supervisor left us alone. The man gestured toward a truck in the parking lot. I walked over, mind racing through options that didn't exist. Inside the truck, he opened a folder, photographs. The first showed me leaving my house that morning. The second showed Angela at the coffee shop. The third was my mother in Memphis, now using the walker grocery shopping. The fourth was Deshawn's sister with her kids. They knew everything. They'd always known. The man's voice was calm, professional, like he was delivering a package instead of a death sentence. He explained that Ethan had been very disappointed by my departure, but he understood why I ran. Killing Deshawn had been traumatic, so he'd given me time to clear my head. 16 months of vacation. But vacation was over. My skills were needed back in Memphis. There was expansion planned, new artists being developed, new territories opening. I had 72 hours to return. I asked what I was thinking even though I knew the answer. What if I didn't? He gestured at the photographs. Then they'd start with my mother. Then Angela. Then Deshawn's family. Yes, they'd kill children if necessary to make a point. Everyone I'd ever cared about would disappear, but he assured me it wouldn't be painful for them. Ethan was a professional, quick, clean, efficient. A courtesy, really. He handed me a business card with an address in Memphis. Ethan wanted to meet personally. He appreciated loyalty and understood I just needed time to process my evolution within the organization. Then the man left, and I sat in that truck surrounded by evidence of my failure. The photographs mocked me. Proof that escape had always been impossible, that freedom had always been illusion. I could run again, take Angela, disappear deeper into America's heartland. But Ethan had found me once in a city of 700,000 people. He'd find me again. And next time wouldn't be a polite recruitment. It would be a lesson delivered in blood. I could go to the police, try to trade information for protection. But Ethan owned law enforcement in Memphis, and probably had connections in Nashville too. Who would believe a former enforcer over a Grammy-winning producer with political connections and the charity foundation? The truth was simple and terrible. I had no moves left. Ethan had played this game better. He'd let me run specifically, so I'd build something worth protecting. A man with nothing can't be controlled. He might fight, might talk, might become unpredictable, but a man with everything to lose, that man becomes perfectly obedient. That night I told Angela I had a family emergency in Charlotte. My mother was sick, needed help. I'd explain everything when I got back. She believed me because she loved me, and trust comes with love. She kissed me goodbye and told me to take care. I tasted the lie on my tongue, bitter as poison. I flew to Memphis the next morning. 72 hours was more time than I needed. What was I going to do with 2 extra days? Pretend harder. The address led to a recording studio in East Memphis, one of those high-end facilities where major artists recorded. Ethan was in Studio A, sitting at the mixing board reviewing a session. He looked exactly as I remembered. Designer glasses, expensive casual wear, the confidence of someone who'd never been told no. He didn't stand when I entered, just gestured to a chair across from him like I was early for an appointment. For the next hour, he explained my new role. I wouldn't be doing security anymore. That chapter was closed. Instead, I'd be talent management. My job would be recruiting young rappers, developing their careers, building their brands, and using those brands as distribution networks. My street credibility, my Memphis connections, my understanding of the culture would be invaluable. It was a promotion, from enforcer to executive, from violence to strategy. He explained the compensation package, salary, benefits, even a retirement plan, all legitimate on paper. I'd be a respected industry professional, and in exchange, I'd help Ethan build his empire larger, help him exploit more artists, help him create more victims like Deshawn. Regarding Angela, my mother, everyone I loved, they'd remain safe as long as I performed. They were insurance, guarantee of my continued cooperation. I could visit Nashville once a month under supervision. I'd watch my relationship deteriorate from a distance, but at least Angela would stay alive. That was 8 months ago. I'm 31 now. I work at a management company in Memphis, signing young rappers to development deals that make them rich and trapped. I wear designer clothes. I attend industry events. To anyone watching, I'm a successful talent manager helping artists achieve their dreams. Angela still lives in Nashville. She doesn't understand why I can't come home, why I only visit once a month, why everything changed. The relationship is dying slowly. Soon she'll meet someone else, someone real, someone who deserves her. That will hurt, but at least she'll be alive. My mother is still in Memphis, unaware how close she came to death. She's proud I'm in music management, thinks I've finally made something legitimate of myself. She doesn't know I'm more trapped than I ever was on the streets. This confession is my only act of rebellion. I'm recording this on equipment Ethan doesn't know about, uploading it through networks he doesn't control. When I'm done, I'll release it and hope someone understands what I'm trying to say. The music industry you see is a facade. Behind every successful rapper is a network of exploitation. Behind every hit song is a distribution route. Behind every Grammy celebration is a money laundering operation. The artists are products, disposable and replaceable. The real power is in production, in management, in the infrastructure that nobody examines. Ethan Stone is one example, but he's not unique. The entire industry operates this way. Hip-hop, country, pop, all of it. The music is real, the talent is real, but it's all been weaponized by people who figured out how to profit from art while destroying the artists. I killed my best friend for these people. I abandoned the woman I love. I'll probably die for them eventually, and Ethan will keep winning Grammys, keep mentoring young producers, keep being celebrated as a creative genius. He'll die rich and respected while thousands of kids from poor neighborhoods destroy themselves building his empire. That's the truth they don't want you to know. The real criminals aren't in music videos with guns and chains. They're in studios with platinum records on the walls. They don't make threats. They make contracts. They don't kill with bullets. They kill with clauses and percentages. And they're untouchable because the system was designed to protect them. If you're watching this, understand that every artist you admire is potentially trapped in this machine. Every song you stream might be funding something dark. The industry isn't about music anymore. It's about control, exploitation, and money laundering dressed up as art. I don't expect justice. Justice doesn't exist for people like me. What I'm asking for is awareness. See the industry for what it really is. Understand that the game is rigged from the start. My name is Marcus Thompson. I lied about that too. James Wilson was just a mask. But this truth is real, and it's yours now. If this story opened your eyes, subscribe to this channel and hit that notification bell. Share this everywhere. Ethan and people like him depend on silence, on everyone looking away, on the music being too good to question. Your subscription, your share, your comment matters. It's proof that truth can still surface even when powerful people try to bury it. Hit that like button. Every like pushes this story to more people. The algorithm doesn't care about justice, but it cares about engagement. So engage. Make noise. Don't let this disappear. My freedom is gone. My life is over. But this truth is yours now. What you do with it is up to you.